This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Jerome Chirco, along to my usual sidekick and partner in crime. That is the Doc from Doc and Jock, John Charles Macaroon. John, how's it going?
Yes! I'm here, Vito. Welcome to the podcast recording. I'm looking forward to it. Kind of had a chance to watch the Tiger series versus Boston, and from my perspective, it was quite disappointing, especially going into it when they were playing a little bit better brand of baseball, and the radio team, Jim Price, had come out and said, look, I got a feeling. We're going to sweep Boston. And Dan said, oh, really? And he had the conviction. He did a real good PR job. I had a feeling that maybe the Tigers would go to Boston, would be refreshed, and would play a great brand of baseball, and they go right away and lose the first two games of the series, and then highlighted by the blooper, I think, of the last 3 years. What did you think of Arsenio Leon's gaffe trying to field the baseball and throwing it at the umpire? Because when I saw that, everybody at the outside patio was just drinking, laughing, having a good time, and we all said, are you serious? And then they pan to the umpire, and he kind of looks, and the camera gets a great shot of him. He looks, and he starts chuckling. And at that moment, I was like, oh, man, this is quite embarrassing.
Luckily, I wasn't watching the game at that point, so I missed out. You know what? It seems like I missed out on all the bad Tigers baseball. When I watch, Doc, they win. They just get it done because they know I'm watching.
Really? Listen, Vito, I want to tell you this. Have they kind of turned you off from watching? Are you kind of not invested, or are you just busy doing other things?
Busy doing more important things when I consider this fact. Now, I'm doing this podcast, but remember this too. The Tigers, I don't think, are in the mindset or state of winning. How many times have we talked about this? An old topic, right? I mean, their players are trying to win, so I think they're trying to win, obviously, right now, but it's going to come... there's going to be a time that comes very soon here, Doc, where they're going to find out for sure, and I think rather soon that they're selling for sure as well, as we near that non-waiver trade deadline this season.
You feel like the clock is ticking on the season, and you think the implosion is just around the corner. I kind of feel it too, but I kind of feel like it might be a big one. You might have a combo deal where Chris Ilitch is like, you know what? This season's a wash. I'm losing tons of money. I don't think this squad is going to make the playoffs. You might have a situation where both Al Avila and Brad Ausmus could be dismissed because it doesn't seem like the future is all that bright. And do you trust Al Avila in a rebuild? Because it's going to take damn near 5 to 7 years to basically rebuild the Detroit Tigers organization with what you got in the minors, the draft, and things like that. So I'm kind of sensing the same thing. Impending doom is looking like it's right around the corner. And for you, I know you're busy with other adventures and other things that you're working on, but I can agree with you. Watching Tigers baseball, unless you're crazy right now, it's really tough. And there are some positives, though, that we can look to. I'm looking forward to Buck Farmer's start versus Arizona. I hope that he can continue his recent wave of success. I'm looking forward to seeing what JD can do. And if this is the week that Miguel Cabrera can kind of break out of his offensive slump, well over 30 games without a home run. But did you notice, and have you paid attention to the gear that Miguel kind of comes to the plate with? He is all like bundled up with padding and things like that. He's got a huge pad on his left ankle. He's got a huge pad on his left elbow. He's walking to home plate looking like he's a catcher. And his performance, I think, if you say what's been the single thing that has been noticeable that has affected the Detroit Tigers in the last 2 weeks, outside of the struggles with the pitchers, I would say Miguel Cabrera's struggles have started to be highlighted. And as each game passes, more and more people are starting to notice, Miguel Cabrera is struggling.
Well, I think it mirrors the fact that he's nearing the downside of his career. He is 34 years old. I'm not going to say 34 years young.
Have you read
in
anything?
Baseball?
Is he injured?
Purposes. Well, I think he's got injuries. He's got the groin that's been bothering him, stuff that's going to be lingering. Okay, this stuff isn't going away, and nagging injuries from over the years, no matter what it is, what it's been described or called as in the past, there's other injuries that they've discovered, I bet, their training staff, their medical staff, that they haven't fully revealed or disclosed to media members, to the masses of Tigers fans out there, such as you and I, too, Doc. So they're hiding some stuff probably to save face with him and looking out for him and his best interests so Miguel Cabrera doesn't have to answer questions about this injury and that injury. But we all know behind the scenes, Doc, or from afar, that, guess what? We know Miguel Cabrera at 34 is not going to be the same in terms of staying healthy consistently. He's going to have those nagging injuries flare up even more, and when they do, they might bother him even more and cause him to miss even more elongated periods of time than he has perhaps missed in a Tigers uni in the past.
So many people last year started to say, look, should we be concerned about Miggy, based upon his performance? But he had a decent season. But, when people talk about Miggy, everybody would say, look, he's going to hit 300. He's going to have at least 25 bombs. But his struggles of late, especially the power outage, has really hurt the team. We can talk about the fact that, when Miguel Cabrera, a surefire Hall of Famer, goes into a swoon like this, when his OPS is under 800 and it's dipping rapidly, his, batting average is well under 300. He's not producing the runs. And when you see a team that struggles mightily with pitching and they're inconsistent scoring runs, you got to look to their leaders. And when I was talking to Jason, in a previous recording this week on the network, we talked about, how do we fix this? Let's stop talking about all the complaints. How do we fix this mess? And I went easy. Keep it simple. If you fix JV and you fix Miguel Cabrera, this team is infinitely better.
You can win then all of a sudden, right? You can win a lot more than you have been and be competitive, especially in a division where the Twins are in first place, the Indians haven't taken off yet. You've got a shot to make it into the postseason.
I believe you're exactly right. But, how much more patience do we give the guy? And I was a proponent when we talked about fixing the Detroit Tigers. I said, look, Upton's gotten a rest. Castellanos has gotten a rest. V-Mart in the past has gotten a rest when he struggled. I said my first quick fix, in terms of fixing JV and fixing Miguel Cabrera, give him a week off. Just give him a week off. This week you're playing Arizona, Tampa Bay. Those are 5 games. You can pretty much, maybe go 2-3. But if in the end Miguel Cabrera comes back and hits 10 home runs this month, well worth it. So I think the clock is ticking. Miguel needs to rest, don't you think?
Absolutely. But I'm going to say this too. He might not be the guy that hits the 30-plus bombs anymore, or hits way above 300. Now, can I see him hitting 290, 285, 290, maybe even 295? Yes. But seeing him hit and produce as he did last season, remember, we're saying that it's doomsday for Miguel Cabrera, and we're saying that he's nearing the downside of his career, which he is. But last year, he wasn't even close to being in the conversation of a player who is on the downside of his career. As if you look at his numbers, 38 bombs, 100-plus runs driven in, and OPS well above 900. In fact, above 950 at 956, and he won a Silver Slugger Award, meaning the best hitter at his position at first base in the American League. So it tells you he didn't show signs of it last season. But the thing is, as injuries pile up, and guess what? That groin injury that he suffered earlier in the season when he missed some time, that's a lingering injury. And for a guy that's 34 years old, once again, you can't say 34 years young with this guy, with all the injuries he's had in the past. And he hasn't missed significant time ever, besides 4 in 2015 when he played in 119 games. This guy has been a steady Freddie in terms of playing close to a $162, a full regular season in years past in a Tigers uni. But expecting him to be that kind of player that plays that many games this season and beyond this season, and also produces 30-plus bombs on a yearly basis and records an OPS well above 900, I don't think you're going to see that out of Miguel Cabrera. But I still think you might see him age gracefully and age in a better fashion than a guy who we've compared him to in the past, and as well as on last week's episode too, Doc, in Albert Pujols. Pujols, when he hit a wall, man, he started aging big time and really going on the decline. Miguel Cabrera, I don't think we're going to see a decline in him of that magnitude, Doc, but I think you're starting to see signs of him showing his age and showing the wear and tear that he has taken to his body, that has affected him and his body in years past.
Now, I know you didn't watch the entire series versus Boston, but after the series, on Sunday, the Tigers put a whooping on Boston, primetime game, ESPN. Brad Ausmus kind of said, look, we were hitting. Unfortunately, the first couple games, our pitchers didn't do the job in terms of the bullpen and the starters really giving, really great quality starts. But in the third game of the series, the game in which the Tigers won in the series versus Boston, Miguel had a couple hits, including a line shot off the Green Monster. And Ausmus noted that, Miguel staying with it a little bit better. He's coming around slowly. So, word out of Tigers camp is that they feel like Miguel is slowly coming around. And with the resurgence of Justin Upton and his 10-game hitting streak, they can kind of cover for Miguel Cabrera. So I understand it's a long season and things like that, but what odds do you give Miguel Cabrera of turning it around in the month of June? Because, these next 4 podcasts that we're going to do might be the last 4 that we talk about, before the implosion. We might not get to Tigers Talk episode 100, as I think we're at number 95 this week.
Yes, we are. Yep.
We might not get to 100 before the implosion takes place, because I think we're going to hit 100 right in the middle or right after July 4th if we take a break at all. So do you think that, in the month of June, do you think Miguel Cabrera, especially with series against lesser teams, in June you play Seattle, you play Arizona, you play Tampa Bay, you're not gonna face great pitchers like Chris Sale and the likes that Boston threw at you. You're not gonna face great competition. Do you think Miguel Cabrera turns it around this month and finally does some things? Because I'm starting to feel like, as we're talking, he's gonna have a great series versus Arizona.
But they're facing Zach Greinke on Tuesday night, remember? Ooh. Who's pitching like an ace this season, much more than he did last year, especially in the first half with the D-backs in his first campaign in Arizona. So Greinke's always a tough foe. He's like 13-7 all time, an ERA under 3 against the Tigers all time. So he can get it done and can get it done against any Tigers batter, including Miguel Cabrera. Who do I expect him to come out of his struggles and hit much better this season, and specifically in the month of June? I think as the month of June, as we get into the later part of it, which we're almost midway through June already. But I think by the end of June, we'll see Miguel Cabrera having done better at the plate. Now, hitting at a Hall of Fame caliber level, as he has in years past on a consistent basis, no. But I don't know, if you can really expect him anymore to be an all-star year in, year out with this production at the plate. He's not going to be an all-star this year, but other guys just have to step up. Other guys are capable of doing that, of producing at an all-star level, including the much maligned and ridiculed Justin Upton, who's kind of come out of his shell in recent memory. And really, he hasn't been given enough credit or respect for what he did to start off this season, what he did last year in the second half of the season, and what he has done now since the start of June. 4 home runs in the month of June, 2 straight Sundays in which he's hit a big home run as well against the Red Sox this past Sunday, and the Sunday before that against the White Sox. So he likes hitting home runs against the Soxes, white and red. Okay? Remember that about Justin Upton.
I think Justin Upton right now has a public perception problem, because the notion that's going around is that because he got the big money, because Jordan Zimmerman got the big money, now the Detroit Tigers are in a financial pinch, and one of the great hitters, one of the guys that, one of the talented ball players that many people in Detroit kind of gravitate towards, JD Martinez, is probably going to be shown the door, and maybe he might leave the organization without us getting anything in return. And many people think that because all the money's been tied up, we might lose a guy that we identify with because he's a hard worker. JD's not, wasn't a superstar. He kind of made himself into a superstar. And a guy like that, obviously, we all realize that the fans love him, and at least I would say 70% of fans do not want him to go, but it's inevitable. JD's probably going to be gone, whether via trade or whether via the offseason, another team with a lot of funds is going to make him a huge offer. So Justin Upton, I don't think, people do like and respect the fact that he's hitting home runs, but also at the same time, he's battling the perception that he's the reason why JD is going to be gone. And so I think people are hoping, and I'm hoping, that he continues to mash. It'll help the ball club, but that he'll opt out and he'll get a big, huge offer maybe somewhere as well. We can begin the process of deconstructing the team. So Justin Upton has, had a resurgence, obviously, but in terms of what you think, would you rather have, if you just have one of the two, Justin Upton or JD Martinez?
JD Martinez, but I don't think we have that option to play with. And you're right. Tigers fans get on Upton so much and don't give him credit for being successful at the plate when he has been this season and last because of that perception issue with JD Martinez being up for a new contract, and the Tigers won't be able to give him one because of the albatross of a contract that Jay Up was given by Al Avila. And the money, it was too much money to give to Justin Upton. But people have to also take into account that Upton hasn't been a player that hasn't produced. He has been valuable. And this season especially, look at what he's produced in terms of WAR, wins above replacement according to baseballreference.com, a stat that people don't weigh heavily enough or look into enough when considering how good these players are truly doing. Justin Upton leads in that department, the whole entire Tigers roster in 2017. Based on WAR, wins above replacement, Upton with a WAR above 2 of 2.2 according to baseballreference.com. Leads the Tigers in that stat, that meaning he's been the most impactful, important player to the Tigers this season. And in other words, let me spin it this way, the most valuable player of the Tigers 2017 roster, guess who it could be?
Justin Upton.
Who nobody likes. It's like people don't get it. It's like, and my dad doesn't get it either. I don't want to slam him here, but he just nags on him, man. He has so many people that nag on him, doesn't he? Even you have, maybe even I have, but these Tigers fans aplenty don't give him enough credit for when he is producing. And right now he is truly producing. All throughout the month of June he has had a slow month of May. Not as good as the month of April that he had, but the way in which he started, he was hitting at an all-star level. And in the month of June so far, he is producing at an all-star level. You got to remember that as well with Justin Upton.
So now it leads us to think, and we have to discuss, what do you do with JD Martinez? Because it's really a conundrum for the Detroit Tigers to try and figure out, because he's a fan favorite, he's productive, but at the same token, some scouts that I've talked to personally across Major League Baseball, I'm now up to 3 scouts that messaged me back when I talked to them. They view, JD Martinez as kind of fluky. 3 different Major League scouts, in terms of the numbers and the values, have kind of stated to me that, pay attention to JD's defense. He's a little bit slower. He's a guy that's doing this kind of through smoke and mirrors, through offensive talent. But because of his injury, he is laboring. Scouts have said that, and they've told me directly, if you look at JD Martinez, he is a little bit slower. His bat speed is just a touch slower. But right now, the notion is, yes, they value him as a guy that can get some prospects, but not the top of the line prospects, because across the league, the notion is that JD Martinez is not going to sustain this, and that if you invest heavily in a guy like JD Martinez, you might not get the return on the investment. And that's what scouts are saying. So it's going to be tough for Al Avila to trade JD Martinez, because when the phone rings, and as we've tried to say, look, you have to have a willing trade partner, and you don't want to get back garbage for JD Martinez, because that would be a huge knock on Al Avila, and one that might be just enough on its own to get his ass fired. So you got to get good value for JD Martinez. And once Al Avila decides and starts to shop JD Martinez, then we all know it's done. The fire sale is about to begin. And then it'll have reverberating effects. The entire squad, the entire organization is going to know it's done. And then you might just throw away the entire season. So that's a challenge that Al Avila has, because then if you don't decide, let's say you wait until the very end of the trade deadline and you try and bump up the value for him, trying to get just 2 teams to kind of outbid each other for the services of JD Martinez, you might be able to pull off a trade later rather than sooner. But if it doesn't work out, let's say you gamble. Let's say Al Avila decides to gamble and he says, you know what, I'm going to try and wait till the very end, try to get a bidding war up for JD Martinez, and it doesn't work out. Now you're stuck with him until the end of the season, and we all know his asking price, there's going to be a team that's going to offer him a boatload of money for a bunch of years. And so many people, many pundits believe that the Tigers are cash-strapped and they don't have enough money to make him a legitimate offer. They can make him, quote-unquote, a fair offer, but not in terms of what's going to happen in free agency. His agent's going to go out there and find teams like the Dodgers, like the Yankees, like Boston, that could need a bat. You know how many teams across Major League Baseball could need a guy that could bat third and get 25 home runs in the next couple years? Many teams would be willing to do that. So you're risking losing JD Martinez for nothing when you got a guy that you basically gave up nothing to get. The age-old adage, buy low, sell high, the perfect candidate is JD Martinez. You could get top-of-the-line kind of stuff, maybe 1 or 2 guys that'll help you in the near future. You got to do it. So it's a very complicated and delicate situation, but I'm thinking that it's probably time to pull the trigger and start shopping JD Martinez.
Because you're right. The thing is, when will his market value be any higher than it is right now? And then you risk by trading him closer and closer to that July 31st non-waiver trade deadline. Waiting until then means that you risk getting the best offer that you can. Right now, with his trade value extremely high, you can get, according to Anthony Fennick, did you see the piece that he recently penned to about all this with the JD Martinez conundrum, what to do with them? He polled 6 scouts and executives from rival squads in Major League Baseball about what they would do. Would they pull the trigger now on a deal involving JD Martinez or wait until closer to the July 31st non-waiver trade deadline? Now, these people that he polled said that right now, the Tigers could get multiple prospects, one among an organization's higher tier players, plus another in the next tier, and then perhaps a major leaguer as well in a deal for JD Martinez. And one American League scout told Anthony Fennick that I would happily give away our number 2 and number 4 prospect. God, if that's the case, I think you might have to pull the trigger now. And the funny thing is, Mike Valenti of 97.1 The Ticket was talking about this very topic, Doc, and it got me thinking, obviously, too. Would you trade him now if you know that offer is on the table, and then you afford risking losing out on this deal if you wait until closer to the July 31st non-waiver trade deadline? And
yeah.
Right? You salivate at the mouth over that, and you pull the trigger, I think, instantaneously, because this season is a lost season. How many times have we harped upon that at this point? Even myself, I had to give in to reality that the Tigers aren't going to win it all this year. And their chances of even getting into the playoffs don't look great right now, even with the Indians struggling thus far in just this season. So they're not running away with the division, but still the Tigers, as they're currently structured, they aren't equipped to make a run in the playoffs. So if you're going to boot on the season anyways and go into a full-on sell mode, let's do it now when you know JD Martinez's trade value is sky high and you can potentially get an offer like that from a rival team, giving up a number 2 and number 4 prospect in their farm system, and especially if that farm system that we're talking about has a number 2 and number 4 prospect that is included in a loaded farm system. Because that number 2 prospect in a loaded farm system, that means he's probably a top 50 guy.
Yeah.
And that number 4 prospect still might be in the top 100 or just outside of the top 100. So remember that as well in taking all this into account in that big decision the Tigers have on their hands to deal JD Martinez now or closer to that non-waiver trade deadline, Doc.
Al Avila has such a tough job. You and I both can sit here and acknowledge that. But let's say the Tigers did have the money, okay, knowing that he's a defensive liability out there. He struggles. And you can tell that there are situations where, he doesn't get the balls as quickly. Some singles can get extended to doubles because of his play out there in the outfield. His arm is okay. He's made some great throws, but he doesn't have too many assists to show for it on the stat sheet. But, given the fact that we can, speculate, if the Tigers did have the money, what is the fair offer you would make for, JD Martinez? Would you offer him $100 million plus? Would you offer him $23 to $26 million a year? What would you pay for JD Martinez, and would you basically offer him a ton of money to be here long term? Because, basically I'm asking you, do you have confidence that what he can do and what his skill set will provide is repeatable, and can you build around JD Martinez? Now, I don't have too much doubt that he would be worth a big contract. I would say, though, that committing to him long term, especially, I wish he was like 25. I think he's like 28, 29 years old. So you basically are now in his prime. You got to max out in terms of where he's at for the next 3 years. And I don't think the Tigers are within striking distance of a World Series in the next 3 years with the massive rebuild you got to do with the latter half of the starting rotation and the entire bullpen.
He's turning 30 this season already.
Ooh.
So remember that, too. And rival teams are looking at that, and that doesn't interest them that much. And shouldn't interest the Tigers in terms of whether or not they decide to re-sign him to a long-term deal. You don't want to give a lot of years to a guy who's going to be 30 by the end of this season.
We needed big bat JD in 2012. That's when we needed him.
Right?
It's bad timing. So I guess your answer would be no. You would not do it.
No, you couldn't commit to him long-term over 4 or 5 years. He might be looking for that. Supposedly, the Tigers, though, did offer him. I heard from somebody that they offered him 4 years at $80 million in totality. $20 million per season.
20 is good.
He's going to get that. But guess what? His agent's telling him right now, he's in his ear telling him, you're going to get $25 million a season. Because he's still only going to be 30. It's not that old. And you know what? Guys are only getting 2 years 2-year deals now. Remember that too. And they have that opt-out clause after 2 years. He'll probably get that because then he'll think, after 2 years of mashing the baseball, well, guess what? I'm going to opt out and get paid handsomely. Like Justin Upton thought when he signed this deal that he has with the Tigers where he can opt out at the end of this campaign. JD Martinez and his agents or agent might just tell him, hey, we got the same kind of deal lined up for you potentially, and you can still make a lot of money right now and then get paid again. And that's the thing they take into account now. How many more times can I get paid, right, until I retire? JD Martinez is probably looking at that with his representation, his team as well. And I think it's a wise thing to do. And I think we've seen more and more players do it, and it's not going to stop anytime soon, in my opinion, too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So I think you and I are both in the same boat. We agree that probably the end is near for JD. It's just at the timing. When is it going to end? When will the era for JD Martinez, especially with the Tigers sitting at 30 wins, 32 losses at the time of this recording, you don't see, the trend going significantly upward for the Detroit Tigers. So it's just when. When will the Tigers sell? And he'll be the first guy, I believe, that will be the first to go because he's a hot commodity. And I'm thinking by the time we hit maybe episode 100, we'll get lucky. We'll be the deconstruction of the Detroit Tigers, and we can share, get some great guests and talk about, what's next. Because if that's the case, if in 5 weeks the Detroit Tigers decide to sell, look out. It's going to be a lot of fun to talk about and a lot of fun to see, how the fans react. Are they going to be pissed? Are they going to be like, good, it should have started sooner? Or are they going to be devastated where, we kind of get a sense of where the fans are with this team? Because, it's tough to watching Tigers baseball. Throughout, each and every game, people are tweeting us at Detroit Podcast. This is tough. This is brutal. I can't take this. And so I think a change is needed. And a caller to a radio station said it best. Fans have a lot of roster fatigue with this team.
They do. You're right.
The same group of guys. And
well, the bullpen, God, that tells you right there why you should have roster fatigue. They haven't done anything about the bullpen for how many years straight, and the bullpen still sucks.
And then now, you saw it. I sent you the tweet in that some of the trades that have been made in the past have come back to bite us in the ass. And so because of the fact that other starters across the league that have come from the Detroit Tigers are having success, we'll talk about them next because I sent you the tweet and you saw that, we made a trade for a starting pitcher and he's done some things that haven't been done quite a bit in the latter part of his starts. And so we'll talk about him next after this quick timeout.
Doc, our new partner, our newest one, is the Detroit Sports Commission. And let it be known, guys, that since 2001, the Detroit Sports Commission has applied its expert touch to marketing and to selling the Metro Detroit area as a marquee destination for regional, national, and even international amateur sporting events. And through the Detroit Sports Commission's help, these events have attracted thousands, and I mean thousands of visitors and pumped millions of dollars into our local economy. It is why Detroit is now not only the place where champions are made, but also the place where championships are played. So to find out more about the Detroit Sports Commission and all of the events they're bringing to our region, please follow the DSC on Twitter and on Instagram at DET Sports and check out their fine website at DetroitSports.org. And back here in episode number 95 of Tiger Talk with Chirco and Company, 5 away from episode number 100. Should be a grand edition of the podcast, Doc.
All right. You know who I was talking about. I sent you the tweet. And do you know who we got for Robbie Ray in the trade?
Shane Green.
I was looking at that and I saw the stat that, I came across was the fact that I think in the last 3 starts, he's had 10 strikeouts.
At least 10.
Wow.
Yes. Isn't that something?
And 3 consecutive starts. And when you're in the conversation with Randy Johnson and things like that, you're like, oh, we got Shane Green. So we got fair value, huh?
Laughable now. But, think about it this way, too, Doc, regarding Robbie Ray. So, you know who Doug Fister was traded for, right? To the Nationals? To the Nationals for Robbie Ray was included in that package. So now looking back at it, hindsight 2020, that trade wasn't horrible. If Dombrowski would have just kept his prized prospect from that Fister deal. Because remember, he got slammed. Dombrowski got ridiculed. People thought that wasn't a good enough return for Fister. Look at where Fister is now. Look at where Robbie Ray is now. Ray's only 25, and he's a lefty. And you still had Ray on your roster, on the Tigers roster, Tigers fans would be bowing down to Dombrowski and even more. And I've already bowed down to him a lot.
Now, Vito,
Doc.
are we doing this in hindsight? Because he struggled in Detroit.
He did a little bit. He was still very young, though.
You felt
he's only 25 now.
You maybe felt like the Tigers gave up on him a little too soon.
Prematurely.
And then you didn't get the proper value in terms of Shane Green.
A relief pitcher who's a middle inning. I mean, okay, late inning arm, but he's not your closer, and he's not a top flight relief pitcher. He's no Andrew Miller. He's not going to put a fire out and be used in high leverage situations game in, game out and get it done. Now, Ausmus has deployed him as that arm in the Tigers bullpen, but guess why he has? Because the bullpen, once again, what's the word for it? Sucks. That's why Green's your best relief pitcher, maybe. But in another bullpen, such as the Indians, you think he'd be used in high leverage situations every single game like he is with Brad Ausmus? No.
Nope.
No.
So you look at it and you go, oh, man, Robbie Ray is doing some things over there with Arizona, and now they're coming in. That's why we're paying attention to this.
Yep.
Arizona's going to play the Tigers in a quick 2-game set right now, I believe, on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. And what are your thoughts about the series? Because it's a big series. I feel like if you play well in front of your home crowd, then you have an opportunity to get back to 500 going into the series versus Tampa Bay.
But guess what? The D-backs come into this series red hot. Winners of 5 of their last 6. They're 39-26. Do you really think, how confident are we in the Tigers to pull out even a win, maybe? Tuesday night's against Zach Greinke. We know what Zach Greinke has done lifetime against the Tigers. A 2.79 earned run average in 28 games, including 25 starts.
So you're saying Zach Greinke has an edge and probably will shut down the Detroit Tigers?
Has an edge on Buck Farmer. But Farmer, what's his ERA, Doc, this year?
1.34?
0. So we got to give him credit for that.
Yeah, that's right.
2 starts, 13 innings pitched, a 0 earned run average, and a 1.33 fielding independent pitching mark.
Nice.
So Farmer's done his job, but who are you going to take with Greinke on the mound? Greinke or Buck Farmer? Really? We're not going to have this conversation. It's stupid, right?
Okay, so you're thinking at best 1 game, split the series. That'd be great for them.
That'd be great for them in this series, yeah.
So you're coming in hot. So you're coming in high on Arizona. What have they been able to do? What does your kind of census tell you about the Arizona Diamondbacks coming into Comerica Park?
Well, you know what? They can pitch, and Paul Goldschmidt, Goldie, has done it all season long. Their all-star first baseman. He's a guy that can win the Silver Slugger year in, year out at first base in the National League. And he has like this home streak of at least getting on base with the D-backs this season. He's a guy that just finds a way, man, to get it done at the plate. Doesn't have to hit for power, but he hits for power. He hits for average. He's the Miguel Cabrera in his prime of the National League right now. That's how good Goldie is for the Diamondbacks.
Okay, so earlier in the show, we talked about quickly fixing the Detroit Tigers. And I said, in talking to Jason, that we're doing it in the absence of making any player moves. But Jason said, I don't need 10 minutes to tell you my plan to fix the Tigers. He said, look, and others are saying it as well. Okay, it might not be fair. It might not be reasonable. It might not even be the best option because of the fact that it's not really his fault. But is it fair or is it foul to say that the best way right now with the Detroit Tigers and what they're doing and kind of what you see with Brad Ausmus, the manager? He's a 500 manager. The team right now is sitting 2 games under 500. But overall, Brad Ausmus is a 500 manager. He is average.
He is average, yeah. He's average at best.
Is the best way right now? Is there a legitimate argument to be had that in order to salvage the month of June, that Al Avila needs to sit down and just have that meeting with Brad Ausmus and just say, look, we're making the move just for the sake of making a move, just to see if it's a shot in the dark, this team needs to play a little bit better because of the fact that the team plays, and the reason why I think a lot of fans are turned off, the team plays listless. I think you and I could go in there and have more passion day in, day out than the squad. And what's it a reflection of? The manager. Yes, he's shown a little bit more emotion. Yes, he's done a little bit better, but I think that this Tigers team is unlikable, and the personalities that are being shown and the way this team talks is a group of guys that make excuses, that basically aren't gamers, game in and game out. When your manager comes out and says, look, the schedule sucked and we were, beholden to that and we sucked this week because we were tired, then, you kind of get a sense that excuses are allowed to be talked about within that organization. And the general manager had to come in and say, that nonsense talk has to stop right now. And I do believe he was probably talked to and said, look, that's probably a mistake. You shouldn't be talking about it, even if we are tired. Everybody knows it. You just don't say it. So is it fair or foul that the Tigers could be better, could get that shot in the arm that they need, could be their Monster Energy drink, could be their caffeine, could be the jolt that they need to get over the hump and avoid a fire sale if you fire Brad Ausmus?
Not now. I epitomize the movement of fire Brad Ausmus, don't I? I've always harped upon his mistakes. I've ridiculed him, criticized him when I felt it's been needed. But last year was a time when you should have fired Brad Ausmus, and you might have made it into the playoffs. This year, you're not going to avoid the looming fate of the Tigers having to endure through a fire sale. It's not going to change enough firing Brad Ausmus now. And the thing which I kind of snickered about, Doc, I don't know if you saw me without me talking and saying anything here, but you said that Al Avila would bring Brad Ausmus into his office and then say to him that he was firing him just to make a move. You're saying Al Avila would just say that to Brad Ausmus? That'd be funny, though. It'd be really funny if somebody caught that, recorded that. Because Ausmus, if I'm Ausmus, you're telling me that you're making a move. You're firing me just to make a move? If I'm Ausmus, man, I'm irate. He better not say that. And no. I know we don't think he's going to, but what if he did?
That would be the reasoning.
How funny would that be?
That would be the reason.
He can't say it.
No.
What if he said that to Ausmus?
Obviously,
that'd be hilarious.
would be smart enough to say, we're going in a different direction. The club needs it.
Yeah, we're not just making a move to make a move. If I'm Brad Ausmus, man,
we don't know. We don't know now how it goes. You know, they sit down and they go, "Look, Brad, we've decided to go in a different direction. Thank you for your services." Then they get up there and they probably would have Brad Ausmus sit next to him and be like, "We respect Brad. He's an up-and-coming manager.
He's so PC, excellent manager. Let somebody else hire him, though, because we know we're not going to keep him.
It just didn't work out here and all that.
He'll find another job. Good luck, Brad.
We really had confidence that just, you know what? At this point in time, we felt in the best interest of the ball club, we got to go with Lloyd McClendon.
Yeah, what a great manager, right? Yeah, come on, what has he proven?
Right, exactly. So that's not it. So what would you say? What is the shot in the arm they need? What is the monster drink? What is the jolt? What is the jolt that Vito would inject into this thing? Because we need something. We need a little bit of hope. I mean, I'm going down there Friday. I guess, news was made on Tuesday that Michael Fulmer's next start was going to be skipped over and he's going to be extended out. So his next appearance is going to be Saturday. So I'm not exactly sure who is going to pitch Friday. I'm hoping maybe it's going to be Verlander, but maybe it might be Norris, but I'm not exactly sure. But what is the jolt Vito would give to this Detroit Tigers team? Because we need something. I mean, you talk about the Tigers, it's all negative. It's kind of impending doom. Nothing seems to be that you throw up against the wall other than the, geekniks that love the draft, and we're all like pining over, this 18-year-old kid that has a...
We don't know about those guys, yeah.
Yeah, or whatever, the geekniks that love the draft and looking at, who's drafted from Florida, pitchers, catchers. I think you and I are in the same boat, like, great, it's good to read about them, but we're not going to invest that much in the draft. Are you kidding me? Why would you invest that much in the draft? There's so much to look at in terms of they're going to go to the minors. Fado could come up here, I threw out a joke. Shit, let's just put him in the bullpen right now and see what he's got. Throw him in the fire.
He might be better than somebody in that bullpen right now, yeah.
They must have really liked him. I guess you heard the story. They tried to draft him, but he said, no. And 3 years ago, he went to college instead of coming up to the Tigers. And in the end, they got him, just quickly, though. I did read up on him. He's got a good fastball, decent slider, but Scout said that he overused that slider quite a bit, and he might have, some instant... He might have some issues with recovery from those knee surgeries because his miles per hour was inconsistent throughout the year. Look at me.
Yes, you know a lot. You knew more than me about him.
Hey, and if you go to DetroitSportsPodcast.com, which I know you do, I wrote a little piece about the Tigers' 18th pick in the 2017 draft. I got comparisons as a teaser as to who Major League Scouts kind of compare him to. So you can go check out the fine work that the staff does here at DetroitSportsPodcast.com, and people can check out your work at Freep.com, and you do the series previews, and they're excellent because you've been pretty spot on throughout the course of the season. So, obviously right now, you can't give them a jolt. I can't give them a jolt. Everybody's kind of in a situation where you look at it and you go, it is what it is. You're looking at an 81 to 85 win team. We all knew it. And impending doom.
Well,
so basically, tick, tock.
It is.
Tick, tock, tick, tock. We're getting closer, guys. And sorry if you feel like we're overly negative, but Vito's a realist. I'm a realist. We all know what's coming. Just sit back and maybe enjoy the ride.
When you can't give a team a jolt in a given season, isn't that clear cut to you? You've got to sell. That tells you. That should tell the Tigers organization, their higher ups, you've got to sell. Pull the trigger on JD sooner than later, too, to get the greatest coup of prospects that you possibly can that can rejuvenate this organization for the future.
You know what's fucking embarrassing is that watching a Tigers game is like torture. You need a couple beers. You know what I was more excited about? And I hate to admit it. I was more excited to watch testimony from Comey and Jeff Sessions than it is to watch the Detroit Tigers.
Comey Day was huge. How about all the people that tuned in, even via social media, all the people that they got to tune in to tweet out stuff about Comey, what he was saying about Trump. And that was must-see television. That was appointment viewing. The Tigers right now aren't appointment viewing. They aren't appointment listening. And that's why you boot on this season and you start thinking about after 2017, 2018 and beyond. You have to start focusing on, Doc.
So, in the end, Vito, there is no jolt that you can give the Detroit Tigers. I've tried. We've all sat here and really tried to find a fix for the Detroit Tigers, and we just haven't come up with really anything other than waiting for the end of the season or even waiting for the trade deadline in order to kind of figure out what's the next move. So, hey, I don't feel like we're being overly negative. I feel like we've been realistic. I feel like when we talk about the Tigers, it's a realistic look at what's going on with this team, and you have to realize, if you're listening, that this team is not going to look like what it is right now today, probably on July 15th.
Yeah, you know what? You would have to be stubborn to believe the Tigers have a chance of winning this year, and the Tigers front office would be very stubborn if they didn't make a move to sell. Looking forward to 2018 and beyond.
Do you have hope that Al Avila is going to be the guy? Because like we said earlier, I kind of feel like it's not just going to be Brad Ausmus if they start making moves. It's going to be a wholesale thing. I feel like, you know what? If you start 2018 and you want to be fresh, blow out the general manager, blow out the manager, and start over. Because when you look at it, the minor league system needs to be overhauled. The talent on the team needs to be overhauled, and there's going to be some lean years ahead. So many people are sitting here going, do you trust Al Avila to be the guy to do the job? I don't, but I'm wondering how much loyalty there is from the top because of the fact that there is no cash. They're not going to be really spending a whole ton of money to fix this team. So I sit here going, you know what? If I'm Chris Ilitch, I start over because, you know what? Dave Dombrowski was here. He did a lot of good things, but also the guy right next to him, his right-hand man, was Al Avila. So if you want to start fresh and you want to lay some blame, you really could look to his right-hand guy and say, you know what? We gave it a chance. Some of the moves really have blown up in our face and have made us even more cash-strapped than in years past. So I'm a little bit skeptical in thinking that Al Avila can be the guy that can rebuild this, even if you give him another 5 to 6 years.
Well, what has he really done that's really positive outside of bringing back his son to be the backup catcher, and now he's the best catcher on their ball club? So you have to consider that's his best move. Nepotism at its finest once again, and getting Alex Avila back here. He's produced up to this point, but his large-scale signings have not produced up to the magnitude that they should have by this point. Even Justin Upton, who I love a lot more than others, well, still making all the money that he has, he's probably not worth the money he's being paid. And Jordan Zimmerman, you remember, he signed him to that big deal, too. That's a lot of money for a guy that's, a back end of the rotation starter at best. So think about it. Al Avila is as much to blame, if not more, than Brad Ausmus. And I'm starting to lean towards the fact that actually, Al Avila's to blame more than Brad Ausmus, who I hate. I despise Ausmus, obviously, as a skipper. But I think Avila, more people should be harping upon the fact that he's not the right guy. He's the one that's constructed this team. So he's as much, if not more, to blame than Brad Ausmus for the woes of this ball club, Doc.
All right, Vito. You know what? When you talk about the Tigers, I'm excited, though. Each and every game that I get a chance to watch, I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do this week. Because, when you look at it, just when we count out the Tigers is the time maybe they could pull off a 5 to 6 game winning streak. I'll be down there Friday. I'm going to try to get there as fast as I can. Going to scoop up one of those Michael Fulmer, rookie bobbleheads. So I'm taking the nephew down there. I'm hoping for a good game. And you always have confidence a little bit when you can kind of throw out there Fulmer, Norris, Zimmerman if they perform
Zimmerman,
well.
And then give me confidence.
While we were negative a lot during this episode, there is just that little glimmer of hope that you can have watching the Detroit Tigers because they have offensive weapons. Mm-hmm. It's just putting it all together and finding the right chemistry. And that's the search that we still are in search of for this team, is that can they put it all together for a stretch of time in the deadline that they've been given? Because by all accounts, they got to the end of June. So I'm a little bit surprised that the sense of urgency hasn't been there once the deadline and the onus was given. I'd be like, damn, man, we're about to be sent out of here. Let's put it in gear. And yet, win, loss, losing series left and right. I looked on the schedule there. What I do with the schedule is I put an L in a circle for the wins, and you just look across the entire season, they're averaging about 3 wins a week out of 7 games.
That's not enticing. That's not sexy.
That's not sexy.
The only thing right now that will turn me on with the Tigers, and I've in the past always been turned on by the Tigers more than anything else in the world. Right now, for me, though, they're not turning me on, and the only thing that will going forward this season is if they make that big move of dealing JD Martinez to start the official sale and what you could label as a fire sale. They need to do that to turn me on once again here, Doc.
Vito, when they do it, you're going to be like, who? You know it's going to be guys that are going to be...
Oh, better be a good haul. You're right. The onus is on Avila to make an awesome move. You better get the better end of the deal. If you don't win the deal, you can't deal all these guys just for anything. And JD Martinez is a guy especially you better win the deal with when you deal him. At whatever point it is this season, you better win the deal.
Okay, so before we get out of here, the news did kind of come out why Fulmer's next start is skipped. It came out that he had an MRI on Friday for inflammation in his bursa, which is his shoulder. No structural damage was found, so it's just kind of a thing where he needs rest, and he'll be back on Saturday. So that's why this current start will be skipped.
He legitimately needs rest. The rest of the Tigers, well, maybe Miguel Cabrera too, like you brought up. That was a good opinion you brought up.
Yeah, but Vito, do you also know in terms of the concern with Michael Fulmer, they said that his delivery is kind of, and that's why a lot of people, and you ask, like, why would the Mets give up on Michael Fulmer? The scouts that looked at him said that his delivery is so violent that it might lead to problems in his body with his shoulder or his arms because of his delivery. It might need to be tweaked going forward if you want to invest a ton of money in him. So this might be a little start, might be a little indication that our guy that we're counting on might have some problems, but let's knock on wood, hope not.
Yes, sir. And my go-to scout is my brother Dominic Chirco. Dominic has told me before that he worries about Fulmer. Even recently, he's said that with Fulmer's struggles of late not looking as sharp or as effective, he thinks that Fulmer might be in line for a little bit of a sophomore regression. Just hopefully it doesn't endure past this season. Because once again, this year, what does it matter if he struggles a little bit? They're not trying to win this year. He's going to be on the roster for 2018 anyways, so worry about what he does in 2018 and beyond is what I'm trying to say. And with the rest of the Tigers roster, even Miguel Cabrera, he might not hit up to his standards from years past. But let's say he has one down year and has it this season. Next year, maybe he gets back at it. You know what I mean? With a revitalized roster, why can't they win? With a better Miguel, a better Michael Fulmer, a better Verlander, if he's not dealt either, right? I'm viewing it that way, once again, kind of being the eternal optimist, right? Of at least you and I here.
You can check out all the podcasts on the network at our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. Where can people find your stuff, Vito?
At Vito Jerome on Twitter. You can find me writing for the Free Press online for the sports section. I do series previews, as Doc lovely noted earlier in the podcast. Always looking out for me and giving me compliments. I appreciate that. Also for the Detroit Athletic Company blog, and via at Detroit Podcast on Twitter and DetroitSportsPodcast.com, obviously, as well.
For Vito Chirco, I'm the Doc, John Macaroon. Thank you. You've been listening to the Tigers Talk Podcast on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.